Hello, today we'll be doing something a little different. We're going to be replacing a motherboard off a Dell PowerEdge R640. And the reason we're doing this obviously is there is a problem with the actual slots for the memory on this motherboard. So since we can't expand it, it is a problem. So we now have a replacement motherboard for it. So we're going to go ahead and change them out. So I thought it'd be interesting to some of you and to videotape basically the steps involved. And of course, when you're going to be doing this, you want to make sure that you have a good idea as to where everything goes at first. So it's not a bad idea to document it. So this is one way of documenting for you. So we'll be taking a look at some of the wires, we'll be taking a look at all the different components of this server, and at the same time we'll be learning a little bit more about the PowerEdge R640. So if you like these videos, please give us a thumbs up, and of course subscribe. We really appreciate those, and thank you so much to all our new members. So let's go ahead and start from the beginning. So the first thing you're going to want to do with one of these new servers is to get all of the components off of the motherboard. So usually what I want to do is start with the front. Before you start anything, make sure that you are well grounded, you have no static electricity. I understand that some of you might argue, well, it's the damaged one, who cares at this point, but it's never a good idea to zap anything. You might end up killing one of your other components, the ones that you want to reuse on your new motherboard, so that would not be a good idea. So most of these are quite simple to remove. So we're going to go ahead and take all of the fans off. So we're going to pile them up on the side. And the big thing when you do one of these, of course, is to be very careful not to damage anything. You can leave things such as hard drives, even the power supplies, you can leave them in there. I traditionally just pull them out just to make sure that there's no power, anyway, as little as possible connected around, and you want to be able to work also as easily as possible, and you don't want to find out while you're pulling out that there's something that got left behind and still connected that you might yank or pull or break. Some of these things are very fine and delicate. So now we've gotten the fans out, so that was pretty straightforward. You'll notice is there's a little trigger here for the case right in the front. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take off this wire. I mean, this one's pretty simple because we'll remember where it went, simply because it's right next to it and the wire literally has no place to go. So that one's not going to be too difficult to remember. So let's look at the sides now. What you'll find is there are some components in the front, what they call the ears. So one has a power button, the other one has an LED on it. I'm keeping this short, so I'm not giving you full explanations of it. But so what we'll have is basically the front has a ribbon connector that goes this way, and there's another one that goes this way as well. You'll find in front, because of the drive bays, you're going to find a lot of the wires that go to the RAID controller, which we'll remove. So we'll try to keep as many of the cables still connected to the components in the front. We don't need to remove all the components. Quite easy to remove if you do need to. There's a couple of screws in the front, take them out, and so forth. So let's go ahead and I can start with maybe the RAID controller. So all you need is really a Phillips screwdriver, and of course they are delicate, so just make sure that you don't pull at an angle or use too much force. And it's really just a matter of making sure that they're unscrewed all the way. And at this point, what you want to do is you want to pull up very gently, and usually it comes right. Yeah, if they've been in there for a while, just want to make sure that it's not still screwed in. But they can get a little sticky here. Okay, so this one here was simple. So open up this little door. I'm trying to remember if it goes there inwards. So that is the RAID controller, and there we go. So I got the connectors off of here. Here's the RAID controller. I'm going to try to put this off screen here. So we got one piece out. If you follow, there is another component here that goes all the way to the back. So this lighter colored one goes right behind the RAID controller here. So we'll take this one out, And let's see where this one goes. There's another one here. So the very small one goes towards the front of the RAID controller. And of course, just got to figure out how this got connected on here. Okay, so you just have to pull it off on the sides here. There's two little arms that grip. All right, now there's also the ribbon controller that goes towards the front. In this case, all it is a little blue plastic that you pull on it. Or at least that's, there you go. Just pull on it, and then you should be able to pry this straight out. I'm using my nails. There we go. So that gets removed here. Let's see if I can pull it out towards the front. There we go. So I'm going to keep this in the front as well. I'll put it back here. Okay, so now we've got all this area cleaned out. All the memory, I mean, that's, well, right now I've actually taken a lot of the memory out, but we'll take up all these spacers out as well. So I'll get rid of all of this. This is actually part of it. And so just go ahead and do them all at once. As you can tell, it's starting to look a lot cleaner. So let's go ahead and take a look at this side now. So we'll do the same thing here. We'll open up this little door. And so we have, so the one completely at the back here is the one that goes to the back plane there. And we have the white one here that goes to here. And what's nice is you got a white end to a white end, so that should be easy to remember where that goes. So, and this one really, if you look at it, it appears to be power. So, and that was, you know, there's only a few places where these will fit back into it on the bright side. Now we do have a ribbon cable here as well, so I'm going to go ahead and pull on this. And again, I'm going to use my nails as best as I can just to pull it out as straight as I can. Here we go. So the connector there is still intact. It would be a shame to, yeah, if you happen to break one, then you're going to have to order an extra part. So, all right, let's take another quick look. So apart from that, we've got the SD card here. I don't know if you're familiar with these, but these will allow you to boot off SD cards. So that's, I understand it was recommended, and then VMware at some point decided that this was no longer a recommended boot. So if you're using VMware, at some point he told you not to do it, and now they've come back to you can, but you've got to have part of your partitions in VMware off of this and onto an actual SD drive or something else for temporary files, caching, that sort of thing. So let's take this away. Now, there's nothing to do with the power supplies because we've basically just pulled them out enough that it would not interfere. You've got the little PCI here, the riser. I mean, that just comes right out, so that one's easy. And you might have in the riser things like video cards. I'd already pulled this out, so there you go. Now what's left is the network at the back. So the network interface card here, this is known as a daughter board. And when you order your Dell, I'm talking specifically about this model, but I mean most Dells are like that. What you'll notice is they have, you just have to, again, I don't think I unscrewed it enough. So you don't have to use brute force on these things because then you'll break something. And there you go. And so what I was trying to say is when you order these things, you get to pick what you want from a network point of view, and how they do that is literally this daughter card. So in this case, it is for 1 gigabit. You could have 2 10 gigabit and 2 1 gigabit. I mean, you can mix and match depending what they're offering at the time. When you go to configure the server, you get to pick this. So the point I'm trying to make is at some point, or right now, if you wanted to change, you've decided perhaps you got the something that was not adequate to what your environment requires, maybe time has passed, you could go and change this and give it a different configuration. Of course, do keep in mind that if, depending on how you've configured things, if you're running Linux, for example, or if you're running even a specific version of Windows, changing cards might affect how it comes back up. And you might end up with blue screens in Windows, you might end up with missing drivers, might not be able to communicate. So just keep that in mind if you're changing one of these. So in this case, we're literally just changing the motherboard, and it should not affect the overall functioning of the server, should be the same drivers and so forth. So for the processors, I don't usually play with these, to be honest with you. When I order these, they just come with the processors that I've selected. You have to be very careful with these little fins. There's actually a little dent there because I accidentally just brazed it very delicately with the screwdriver earlier and made a couple of little grooves there. That doesn't affect the functioning, but it doesn't take much to dent these or to warp them a little bit. All right, so you've got two little tabs here. So there's two basically screws here that you have to remove on the side. You just push on these blue tabs and it comes right out. And there's the processor. So we're going to be very careful. Obviously, you don't want things to touch or affect, and whatever you do, don't bend any of those pins or your processor is going to not work. And it's not a simple thing to try to unbend or to, actually, I'm not sure there are pins on here. Nope, not in this package. So never mind the whole pin point. But the point is, you don't want to touch, you don't want to add grease to it or any of that stuff. So in that case, the processor, since we are not removing the actual fins in the whole cooling system, we're not going to have to add some thermal paste or any of that stuff in this change. So I'm just going to press on these and it comes right out. So again, in my case, I'm just going to document that the label here on the side goes towards the inside, or towards the right side, staring at it from the front. So there we go. So now we've removed pretty much everything that I can see. The other configuration or consideration, wrong word, that I was going to point out is if you are going to replace it, or if you're doing any other kind of modifications, you might want to change the battery. So if you look, it's a CR2032. So you can literally just go and get, and I'm not advertising any particular brand, but you can just go and get another one of these batteries and change it while you're at it. I don't know if the motherboard comes with it or not. I guess I'm going to find out in a few minutes. So now the whole point is to get it out. So how do I do that? Well, I'm going to have to go around the board and literally find all of the screws that are keeping this in place. And there seems to be, they seem to be Phillips. So let me see if I'm correct on this. Of course, we'll want to be careful with the screws. What's interesting is I see some holes that look like they should have had screws, but don't. And most of them are actually have a nice, very well identified circle around it. So they're quite easy to find. I didn't want to break anything. So you lift this little blue here, little blue tab, and what you do is you push it back in that direction, and that releases the motherboard. So when in doubt, check twice. And so as you'll see in the bottom is basically a lot of the you've got a lot of metal tabs here, and what they'll do is they'll actually clip into the motherboard. Unlike if you're used to desktops where there's a lot of screws, this is really just a minimal amount of screws. So we're going to go ahead and put this one away. All right. And so they've given us a new label for the iDRAC Enterprise ID. So we've got something different here. So we're going to have to put that somewhere safe. And we're going to have to There's a cap in here, which we're going to just do in the end. All right, so we just simply make sure that there's no packing material. And you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and clean this off a little bit. Just to make sure that I get most of the stuff out here, because it's a little dusty. We thought we'd cleaned it out before, but now that we're seeing everything properly, let's go ahead and do this the right way and at least keep as much of the dirt out as possible. Of course, keep in mind, if you're going to clean, make sure it's very dry and give it some time to dry off before you go and attempt to turn anything on, because that would be disastrous if it short-circuited because of that. I'm just going to get some wipes. So here's a new motherboard. There we go. Alright, so make sure this little wire doesn't go underneath the motherboard when you're putting it in. So you put it in slightly towards the front, and then once it's in place, you should be able to push it and snap it right back into place. There you go. So the motherboard is now nice and snug. Don't want to touch too many of the components. And now we go back and reverse what we've done before. Plug that back in. Now I've got to put all the wires. Let's maybe start with the processor, since those are the most important part of the, well, one of the most important components. So what you've got is, if you push on these little blue sides here, you've got a thing that protects the connectors. So we're going to go ahead and put this back. So I'm going to put them back in the same order that we had them originally. And again, it's always a matter of not forcing. So if you feel resistance or anything, just make sure you're aligned, and there we go. Life is good, and I'm going to have to just tighten those. What I can do is tighten them by hand. I actually have this here. So the trick again is to try to apply pressure basically to both sides so that it goes down straight. So you've got the no pressure too much on one side or the other. I'm just going to do it by hand now just to get it in. Make sure that they're not going to move. And of course, the real test at the end is when you turn it back on, does everything still work? And unfortunately, it's a little late when you figure it out way at the end, but what are you going to do? So let's go ahead and repopulate the rest of it. So again, we had things like the network, the NIC here. So we go ahead and put that back into its place. And putting it back really is not too complicated. It's just a matter of putting it, making sure that we're snug. There we go. Just push on here. It should be. There we go. Okay, so yeah, there's nice little illustrations here. Press here. There's actually a picture with a little blue finger on it to show where to push. And again, when you're putting these in, usually I try not to over tighten them, and then you try to have equal pressure. It probably doesn't matter for all things, but just try to do that in general just to make sure I don't warp or break a piece of plastic. It is just plastic around the edges for some of these connectors, and that would be disastrous if you broke that. So maybe we go ahead and put some of the cabling back, since that is a bit more not complicated, but I just want to make sure we remember where everything goes. So let's go ahead and make sure that it's back in its proper place. These are rather delicate, but you just push them in. There's a little blue lever there that you can just push back. As I remember last time when we took it out, this one here had the advantage that it was a white piece of plastic on the end, which goes towards the white plastic here. So that's nice and snug. Here we go. Put this one in. And this one here connected right next to the power supplies. So that's back in. Close this little door. Looking good so far. Alright, so let's go ahead and do the ribbon cable, which is this one here. And we're going to want to put it back on its proper side. There's like a little rubber, two little rubber arms, or two little, anyway, on the sides there. I'm not sure how to describe them, but they basically hold on both sides and they're right inside this hole. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back in. Well, that was incredibly easy. Alright, so now we said this was for the RAID controller, and the other two, actually this one seems to be on top, so I'm going to put this one in first. And we said this one here came back to this here. And that is, okay, just double making sure that we don't pull anything out or damage anything. Okay, well this one does not want to go in, probably because it looks like I'm off a little bit. There we go. Yeah, don't be afraid to look from different angles. If, like, again, if you see some resistance, I felt it wasn't quite going in, so instead of pushing it hard, I decided to take a double second look. Okay, now I seem to have, there we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and put the RAID controller. While I'm here, if you ever want to change the RAID controller, so maybe you purchased an H330 or 340 or whichever model you happen to have, and you want to switch over to a 7 or the equivalent with a larger, I'm going to say larger, but if you want to have some cache, because in this case I think it has no cache, and if you want to add something with cache or want to go from one model with something with larger cache, then this is how you do it. It's literally just take it out, put it back in, and there are very, very fine connectors on here, so quite delicate. And at this point what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put this wire back through here. And it's interesting to note that when you put these in, there's actually two pieces of plastic which you may not see in this video because it's dark on, black on black pretty much, but it really guides you so that it is very flush with the RAID controller. So when you put it in, it's very hard to put it in the wrong place. There's also two pins that stick out, and the two pins go, there's two little holes obviously, and I'm going to make sure that the wire is in the right place here so I don't pull on it or extend it. There we go. Okay, so yeah, so it's just a matter of bringing it down, and as soon as it's in its right place, it should go in easily, which when you're trying to make a video, this is sometimes you're I don't like how that's going in. Okay, so the other thing we could do as well is I could have put this in here first. There we go. And then put it in. I think this might be a saner way of doing this than trying to do the reverse. So just make sure that this goes down with it. There we go. Well, I had it in the right place, and now it moved. Well, you win some, you lose some. There we go. Okay, so now it's back in place here. It's because it doesn't want to see. Yeah, okay. I don't think it likes. The wire is very stiff, so it's doing is it's keeping it. All right, so I think I'm going to put it in first, and then I'll worry about the wire, because clearly it's. I think I'm trying a little too hard not to move everything, but. And it's very tight to begin with between these two little. Okay, so I've got one, and the other one is. There we go. There we go. Okay. So now let's hurry up and find my screwdriver, and let's just very gently make sure that this does not come back out. So I don't spend the rest of the day just pushing and pulling back and forth. And just everything looks good. All right, now let's just this back here. Now let's do this one here, and this one I believe went in here, so it's going to fit behind this one that I just put in now. Okay, and there we go. The nice little click. I'm going to close this little door to keep that in there. So as long as that does not interfere with any of the lid's functions, just want to make sure this wire is not under too much strain in case I didn't put it in properly. I think we're okay. And it doesn't go the other way, so I should be good since I never removed it. All right, so what are we left with? Well, we've got things such as the memory, of course. Now, the memory, what might be interesting to you is you can look at the back of the lid, basically. So when you put it the lid, you'll look. There's a diagram. It'll show you which one A1, which one B1 is, and so forth. For memory, I believe. Well, actually, it's written on the motherboard. Now that there's nothing else, you can see it, and I'm directly on top of it. So I'm just going to go ahead and populate to the memory chips, since obviously I'm in a bit of a rush to turn it on and make sure that it works after this. Chip here. Here we go. And the B1 should be this one here. Yes. Let's go ahead and put this back in here. There we go. All right, so I've got my two memory chips. I will add some more memory, and wherever I don't have memory, I'm probably going to re-add these spacers. It's just a piece of plastic, basically, that holds the slot. And of course, it does prevent things like dust or any debris. I mean, things should not fall into a server, but in case it does, the point is you want to protect all the little connectors on the bottom. So it's not a bad idea to put these in. You never know what can happen. So from an operations point of view, we're missing, well, I did have my dual SD card reader here. So there was that. And we had, let's see what else I've got. I'm not going to put any more network cards. I think I'm going to stick to this for right now. So we're just going to go ahead and put this back in here. And this should be pretty straightforward. There we go. So it looks like this server back to the way it was. Had I been smart, I would have put my little screws back in. What I just noticed, though, is they did provide us with the screws, the replacement screws, and they've actually put them in there. So, isn't that interesting? Okay, and I'm going to get laughed at for this. I forgot to put those screws back in. But let's just see if there's any more. Really, at the end of the day, I think there was just... I think there's just 1, 2, 3 that I know. There's 4 of them, and the 4th one was there. Okay, so there's one that fell out when I opened the bag. So the 4th one is this one here. So, all right. So it's not too embarrassing. It's like being watched. So if this is an exam, someone let me know if I passed or not. I guess at the end of the day, whether it turns on or not really is what determines whether it was a success or not. So here we go. So what we're going to do is just put these back in. And actually I'm going to probably use one of these just to make sure, you know, that all the stuff is as clean as possible. And you'll keep your server running, of course, longer if you take care of it. So here we go. Components are all back in. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. And that should be it. So I'm Bob Pellerin, CTOBOB. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Leave us some comments below. We love hearing from you. And of course, if you want to reach us, you could always go to www.ctobob.com. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.